We're really pleased to have the opportunity to catch up with you today as OWC's Italy Country Manager ahead of the big conference, Eolica, next week in Rome. We're hoping you could share with us a bit about from your expertise, the status of the Italian offshore wind market. Well, can you tell us a bit about Italy offshore wind today?
Well, absolutely, and thank you for asking. Italy has been making quite remarkable effort to develop its offshore wind energy capacity so far. The country had several offshore wind projects at the moment in various stages of development, ranging from early scoping submission to post EIA submission and consenting and so on. The projects are located mainly in the Med, South Adriatic, as well as Sicily, Sicilian Channel, and Sardinia, where basically the vast majority of the appetite for wind yield is present. Some of the key points regarding the state of the Italian offshore wind market development include the following. First of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about regulatory framework. The market is ensuring that a clear and stable regulatory framework it's in place as an essential element for attracting investment and promoting offshore wind development in Italy. There's also the element of the grid connection, which is quite fundamental in terms of the development of the necessary grid infrastructure, as well as subsea cables, for instance, to transmit the offshore wind power to shore. And this is very much connected with the wider EU regulatory framework, also called PNRR, which dictates the rule and the funding for the grid infrastructure development for renewable energy in Europe. A mitigation of the environmental impact, of course, in Italy as a very sensitive area of the world is paramount for wind farm as well as floating offshore wind farm further away from the coast, in order to ensure that the marine ecosystem and the local communities are protected and careful planning is in place. This ties in very well with permitting and licensing. So there is also an element of streamlining permitting and processes associated to permitting in order to obtain the necessary license and authorization to allow this project to be built, increasing confidence in developer investment as well as viability of the project itself. Last but not least, as with every major infrastructure, we have the cost impact. So the management of the cost and associated impact in CapEx, OpEx, and DevEx as well is extremely important to drive the cash flow, the appetite, and the investment from the developer across the market, as well as having the right support from the authorities in terms of grid tariff and associated fees. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, very detailed, great. I mean, obviously lots of opportunity, busy market, busy time ahead. You touched a little bit upon, some of the challenges there, I think, but can you give us a bit more oversight then as what do you view as the key challenges that are facing Italy in achieving its goals, its targets that it's set on offshore wind?
Absolutely, Karin, and I'm really glad you asked that question. As you can imagine, there are several fundamental challenges associated with achieving this massive project, as well as reaching the targets for net zero and renewable energy generation in Italy. And as in Italy, as in every other countries, there are elements that needs to be tackled as a paramount, as a first in the line. Amongst the two key ones, we do have grid reinforcement infrastructure and ports and harbor resiliency. Across the first one, on grid reinforcement, and this is valid all over the world, but mostly in those countries like around the Mediterranean areas where rural areas are more widespread, especially in the south of Italy, where the grid will need to be subjected to major reinforcement works in order to accommodate the massive amount of power inflow coming from the offshore wind energy generation. This, again, ties in very much with the wider European level grid reinforcement, a grid infrastructure reinforcement plan envisaged by the EU Commission for 2050. Across the next 25 years, there is a large grid development plan and reinforcement plan across those regions of the Med which suffer the most. This has to be ties in with the ambition from energy generation. The second element I'd like to mention is port and infrastructure, harbor infrastructure resiliency. Building and upgrading ports and harbor to accommodate the construction, integration, and maintenance of offshore wind floating structure, for example, when it comes to the floating wind, but also bottom fixed, although less likely in Italy due to the important water depth that we have in our seas, can be significantly challenging, especially when these port and harbor are in proximities of very high density populated coastal areas. Again, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah. I mean, some quite challenges that are familiar, I think, to us and from other offshore wind markets and particularly floating wind markets. But nonetheless, serious challenges people should be looking out for. I mean, can you allude a little bit to some of the solutions on offer? What are the solutions to support these things, these challenges?
Absolutely. I mean, for the grid element, it's quite obvious that there is a key contribution from the national TSO, Cisterna, together with the government to fast track grid reinforcement and ensure that measures are in place, especially across those regions that suffered the most in terms of grid weaknesses. And a strong alignment needs to be done amongst all the stakeholders, including, and most importantly, the developers who are, of course, submitting the grid application request and of course, facing the challenge of having to deal with, in most of the case, weak grids, especially on the south. All of these things ties in together, and a joint approach involving all the stakeholders needs to be undertaken in strong consideration and alignment with the generation targets. Mm-hmm. With respect to the ports and harbor, definitely there is an element of strong infrastructure upgrades across the Italian, all the Italian key ports and harbor, in order to accommodate the heavy lifting, the transport, and installation of the offshore wind structure. Within the European level grid reinforcement plan, together with the Italian government, there are some dedicated renewables related mitigation that are prescribed for the ports and harbor resiliency. Mm-hmm. It has to be done very early. There is a certain extent of degree of preparation that the country has to put in place in order to tackle the challenge well ahead. There is a massive amount of investment and the cash flow that will need to be put into this, and identifying potentially hubs, real hubs, with a roadmap clearly defined to increase and enhance the resiliency of key locations that can be dedicated to supply floating offshore wind for the next decades.
Sure. Okay, very interesting. Thank you. I mean, okay, great. You've spoken about infrastructure, you've spoken about the grid, you've spoken about ports and harbors. You've alluded quite a bit as well to permitting and regulatory framework and the role that plays moving forward. Clearly, lots of important discussions to take place next week. What else are you looking forward to with the Eolica? What's on your mind? What are the discussions you're looking forward to having next week?
Definitely, the conference will be a great opportunity to touch base with pretty much all the stakeholders involved, from developers to representative of the Italian government to EPCI constructor, and all the other variety of companies involved in the floating offshore wind market. There will be definitely a lot of discussion going on the status of the legislative decree that is very much expected from the government to be released really soon, dictating all the rules and the regulation for the bids for the future offshore wind development in Italy, but also would be an unrivaled opportunity to exchange viewpoint, ideas, and information, thoughts, and general feeling about the market evolution, and also to be part of an exciting new market reality in an emerging country that is extremely promising at this time.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it sounds really exciting, and I hope you have a really fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's Tech Talks, Daniele.
Thank you very much, Katie, and it's been my pleasure to talk to you.
Look forward to hearing how the conference goes afterwards. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.